Chapter 102, 6th Year, Mince Pies. Tuesday, 14th December, 1976. "All right, who do you reckon for keeper?" Sirius asked, tugging his sagging school bag back up onto his shoulder. "Filch or Slughorn?" James frowned, deep in thought. I figured Filch for a beater. Sadistic old bugger seems like he's just itching to whack something." "Ugh, too right he is." "Slughorn, then?" "I dunno. Who've we got left?" "Well, we've already done Hooch, McGonagall, Flitwick. Suppose there's Sprout and Evans!" Sirius sighed, resigning himself to an unfinished conversation. There would be no getting James to focus now that he'd spotted Lily. She was walking next to Mary, and the two girls spun around, peering back. "Oh, Potter." "Hello, James. Sirius." "MacDonald." Sirius returned Mary's smile, and James gave her a friendly nod before his eyes drifted inevitably back over to Evans. "What are you lads up to?" Mary asked, as the four of them fell into step. "Trying to build a Hogwarts Quidditch team with the professors." "Of course you are. And how's that coming along?" "We're stuck on Slughorn." Keeper?" "That's what I was saying." James interrupted, eyes glued to Lily as he asked, "Where you lot off to?" "Library." Lily sniffed, primly. "Going to one of Remus's classes," Mary supplied. "He's been saying for the past week that each one's going to be the last, but I think he might actually be serious this time." "Well, that's not possible, because I'm—" "Shut it, Black!" both James and Mary chorused simultaneously. Sirius grinned. "Mind if we tag along?" James asked, and for a moment Sirius's heart sped up, pulse kicking, but then— "Black doesn't go to the library," Mary said. He turned to look at her, and their eyes met. "He's got a reputation to maintain, after all," she added, smirking. James laughed, and Lily rolled her eyes. Neither seemed to think anything of the casual excuse, but Sirius was still looking at Mary, who raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled, as if to say, "You're welcome." He swallowed, feeling jittery, unmoored. "Why don't you two go on, then?" Mary said, turning back to her friends. Lily's head whipped around, and she gave Mary a very pointed frown, eyes wide. Sirius grinned. "Yeah, Evans, let's switch." Lily narrowed her eyes at him, and Mary giggled. "To be honest, I don't really fancy spending the afternoon in the library anyway," she said cheekily. "Think I might prefer to pop round to the greenhouses." "A woman after my own heart!" Sirius slung an arm around her shoulders. "Remind me why we broke up, MacDonald?" "Because you're an idiot who wouldn't know a good thing if it bit him on the nose." "Ah, of course. I knew there was a reason." James chuckled, turning to Lily with a hopeful smile. "What do you say, Evans?" She paused, pursing her lips and looking him up and down as if she was scanning for any signs of hidden dung-bombs or ink-squirting quills. After a moment, she sighed. "Oh, all right. But I don't want you distracting, Remus. I really do need to revise." James placed a hand over his heart. "No funny business," he promised solemnly, his eyes bright with laughter. "Just studying." Lily gave another long-suffering sigh, but she was smiling grudgingly as she turned back towards the library. "Come on, then." She set off at a brisk pace, and James turned back to Sirius. "Black? MacDonald?" he saluted, grinning himself silly, and then turned to trot off after Lily. They stood for a moment, watching their friends hurry off down the hall. Mary shook her head. "Those two," she murmured fondly. Once James and Lily had rounded the corner, she gently maneuvered Sirius's arm from around her shoulders, linking their elbows together and setting off in the opposite direction. Sirius cleared his throat. "Did you really want to go down to the greenhouses? We don't have to, if you don't want. I mean, I would, but if you'd rather—" "It's fine," she cut him off, smiling. "I want to." "Oh, okay." They were silent for a bit, walking quietly side by side. Sirius thought of the automatic way Mary had said, "Black doesn't go to the library." The knowing glint in her eye when she looked at him. His skin felt prickly, like there were ants crawling over it. Finally, he said softly, Mary?" "How long have you known about the library?" She turned to look up at him, head tilted to the side. "I noticed last spring," she said simply, and he nodded. "Right." More silence. Then, even more quietly, "I didn't realize anyone would notice." Mary patted the back of his hand. "Well, you're not obvious about it, so don't fret. But we were dating for the entire term, Black. I'm not completely oblivious." She continued to stare at him, studying his face. He flushed. "Right, okay." Mary smiled gently, catching his eye. "I won't ask why," she said quietly. "But is it something you want to talk about?" He shook his head. "All right." Mary gave his hand a little squeeze. "If you ever do, just let me know." They continued towards the greenhouses, and as they stepped out into the biting December wind, Sirius turned to look at her. "Thanks, MacDonald." She smiled, a bit of tiny, vibrant sunshine. "Any time." Sunday, 19th December, 1976. Sirius hunched his shoulders against the wind as they walked to the edge of the grounds to see James and Peter off, burrowing further into his Gryffindor scarf. "You sure?" James asked, hesitating. "Ferrex never said you weren't allowed, and Mum and Dad honestly wouldn't mind at all, next year hopefully." Remus smiled. "It might all be over by then, and I couldn't live with myself if anything happened to your family because of me." "Black, you're really going to say no to Mum's mince pies?" "Ah, but I'm not, my dear Prongs." Sirius smirked, although it was obscured somewhat by the scarf. "She sent some ahead first thing this morning. I've got an entire tinful." "Foiled again," James sighed, smiling. He hugged Sirius, then Remus, who stumbled forward a bit and looked mildly surprised by the contact. "Go on, get on the train, eh?" Sirius gave him a friendly punch on the shoulder. "You'll have Evans all to yourself." James needed no further encouragement. He shot them a cheeky wink as he hurried away, with Peter tailing him as usual. Sirius shivered as he stood with Remus, waving. Even after their friends were out of sight, they spent a few minutes watching their classmates stream like spilled ink across the white snow, listening to the happy chatter about holiday plans. "See you, Remus," called an annoyingly chirpy voice. Sirius turned and saw the mousy surprise party spoiler blushing as he scurried past. "Have a good one." "You too." Remus grinned at him, and Sirius felt a twist of irritation in his gut. "That kid again," he muttered, frowning. "Who is he?" "I've told you before, he's a 5th year, in my study group." "Right, he looks like a complete drip." "He's okay." Sirius was still scowling at the scrawny boy's retreating form when he heard a familiar, sharp voice. "What's wrong? Potters kick you out too?" Sirius felt as though someone had wrapped a fist around his heart and squeezed. He hadn't spoken to his brother in months, not since their confrontation the previous spring. A hot flash of anger burst through him as he remembered Reggie's final words, the things he had said. "No," Sirius glared. "I'm just staying here this year." "Why?" There were dark circles under Reg's eyes, and he looked thinner, drawn, cheekbones like knives. "He chose this," Sirius reminded himself firmly. "He hates you." "None of your business, that's why. Now run along, little Reggie. I'm sure Mummy's waiting." His brother raised an eyebrow, as if to say, "That's your best comeback?" Sirius flushed. Beside him, Remus had tensed, fingers clenched into fists. He was glaring at Regulus with such searing anger that Sirius was momentarily taken aback, wondering if he'd missed something. Then Reggie tilted his chin defiantly, and for a split second Sirius was looking at his little brother again, petulant and pouting. But then he opened his mouth. "Not a prefect any more, Loony Lupin? I wonder why. Something to do with my delinquent brother, perhaps? Surely that greasy half-blood Severus wasn't telling the truth." Sirius didn't think, just moved, lunging forward, fists clenched. But Remus was there, strong arms around his shoulders, holding him back. He struggled, anger like bile in his throat. "Take that back, you brown-nosing little—" But Remus was too strong. No matter how he twisted, Sirius couldn't wrestle free. Regulus strolled away, releasing a cold, barking laugh that reminded him of... I can curse him from here, Sirius muttered when Remus finally released him. I'd rather you didn't. Moony's voice was light, incongruent with the spitting anger inside Sirius's chest. He nudged his shoulder, nodding to the castle. Look, we've got it practically to ourselves. Yeah, Sirius mumbled, staring down at his brother's footsteps in the snow. By tomorrow, the imprints would be gone. It would be like he had never been there at all. Come on, then, he muttered, turning back to Remus. Let's go in. Freezing my bollocks off. He couldn't get his brother's face out of his mind for the rest of the morning. The bleached look in his eyes, like someone had scrubbed the soul out of him. Sirius kept replaying the words he'd said over and over, the icy laugh that sounded as if it had come from someone else's mouth. At lunchtime, he walked down to the great hall with Moony and blinked when they stepped through the doors. Blimey! He had never seen the grand room so empty. There were only 3 other students, a Slytherin 7th year and 2 Ravenclaw 6th years, all sitting at one table near the front of the room by the professors. I reckon it's the war, Remus said under his breath as they walked across the room. Parents want their kids home this Christmas. Just you and me then, Moony. Sirius smiled despite himself. The orphans of Gryffindor Tower. Although there were hardly any students to appreciate it, Flitwick had still gone to town with the Christmas decorations. There was silver and gold everywhere, shimmery streamers twirled along the rafters, and enchanted papery snowflakes fell from thin air, disappearing before they touched the ground. A massive tree stood proudly in the center of the room, glowing softly, and a flock of bright, cheerful robins chirped Christmas carols as they fluttered about. Sirius settled down next to Moony and spent most of the meal ignoring the other students. The Ravenclaws were busy with arithmancy, and the Slytherin was sucking up to Slughorn, who looked delighted with the attention. Remember our first year? Sirius asked, nudging Remus's knee with his under the table. It was just you and me for Christmas then, too. Yeah, Remus smiled down at the table as the food appeared. Electric warrior. We'll have to have a listen later. So they did. Sirius levitated the record player down to the common room, and they lay side by side in front of the fireplace, silent as the music washed over them. Sirius played Monolith twice, just to sneak glances at the way Remus shut his eyes and smiled as he listened to Mark Bolan's crooning voice.
Dressed as you are, girl, in your fashions of fading, baby, it's too late.
Sirius was replaying Jeepster for the 3rd time when he looked over at Moony and noticed that the other boy had drifted off to sleep. His chest rose and fell softly, lips parted as he breathed. The firelight danced in the freckles on his cheeks, over the backs of his pale eyelids, in the soft curls of his hair. Jeepster ended, and Monolith began again. Sirius rolled over and rested his chin in his hands, watching Moony dream.
It's too late, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh.
His heart felt swollen in his chest, aching and full, heavy enough to break his ribcage if it kept beating. Sirius turned over, staring up at the ceiling, and forcing himself to breathe. Remus was still asleep when the mirror in Sirius's pocket began to vibrate with a familiar voice. Padfoot! Padfoot! He sat up, pulling the compact out and shushing it. Shh! Moony's sleeping! Hang on. Sirius stopped the spinning record and moved over to an armchair, where he curled up and grinned down at his friend's smiling face. He was still whispering to James when Remus eventually woke, sitting up slowly, languid with the lingering fog of sleep. Sirius could feel Moony's eyes on him, watching, and he suppressed the urge to shiver, trying to focus on James's incredibly detailed account of every single thing that Lily had done or said to him on the train. Still, by the time they said their goodbyes, Sirius was only half listening, excruciatingly aware of Remus's gaze. He snapped the compact shut, uncurling from the chair in a languorous stretch. Remus's eyes tracked his movements, and Sirius felt a heat coiling in the pit of his belly that had nothing to do with the crackling fireplace. "How's James?" "Fine." He stood, walking to Remus slowly, watching the hunger spark in his eyes. Misses me, obviously. Obviously, Remus said, staring in a way that was downright sinful, wolfish, and bone-meltingly eager. Sirius stood above him for a moment, feeling powerful and helpless all at once. He sank slowly to his knees, straddling Moony's hips, and bent forward, leaving a few inches of space and waiting for Remus to close the distance between them, just to see if he would. He did. He always did. When things first started, Sirius had assumed that eventually the sensation would dull somehow, that they would kiss themselves out of each other's systems, do everything there was to do and grow bored, expel the secret urges and move on. But being with Moony wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. Being with Moony was like cigarettes, something that crept into his lungs and his blood until he wanted it more than air. Being with Moony was like drowning, like opening his mouth and swallowing the sea, like forgetting to swim, like kicking the water and knowing it wouldn't do any good. Sirius had never imagined he could know someone like this, could burn the patterns of their skin onto his fingertips, could taste every freckle on their shoulders, could learn the language of every soft sigh and strangled moan. When Remus tugged at the waistband of his jeans, he didn't think before slipping them off. After, it took longer and longer to come back to his body. Even sated and buzzing with the aftershocks of pleasure, Sirius would look at Remus and feel an indecipherable longing, a want that he couldn't understand. He didn't know what more he could take, not when he was already taking so much. So he would squash it and suffocate it and smile once he could breathe again. "Fancy a mince pie? I'm starving." Sirius leapt to his feet, pulling his jeans on quickly before Remus could look at his legs. He waved his wand. "Accio biscuit tin." It flew down the stairs with such incredible momentum that Sirius nearly fell when it slammed into him. "Oof!" "Your wand work is too broad," Remus tutted, buttoning his trousers and yanking a t-shirt over his head. Sirius stuck his tongue out and tossed him a mince pie, settling back down onto the armchair he had occupied earlier. His knees throbbed dully, and he winced, rubbing one with the hand that wasn't holding a pie. Carpet burn. "You should see my back," Remus said wryly. He sat across from Sirius on the sofa, leaning his elbows onto his knees. They were quiet as they ate, stealing glances at each other. Sirius licked the sticky fruit from his fingers once he was finished, brushing the crumbs roughly from his bare chest. "Aren't you going to put your shirt back on?" Remus asked casually, folding up his pie tin into a neat little triangle. "Nah, no one's here." "Yeah, but still." Remus waved a hand helplessly. Sirius smirked. "Prude." He was rewarded with a laugh, and Remus narrowed his eyes as he flicked the folded-up tin in Sirius's direction. "Tart."